But hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Victoria, the Product Marketing Manager here at August Schools. Just a bit of housekeeping. We'll be sharing the recording of this webinar right afterwards. So if a student comes into your office and you need to drop, no worries. We'll be having Q&A after the session. So feel free to put questions in the chat throughout, but then we'll have some dedicated time at the end to answer questions. All right. So I am so excited for today's conversation at August Schools. This topic, how to build strong systems of student support, is something we think about all the time. It's what our entire platform was founded on. From the very beginning, our founders set out to create a tool that would help counselors and student support teams collaborate more easily, share information, and most importantly, have the data they need to take a proactive rather than reactive approach to student well-being. So it's such a privilege to get to introduce two experts who have spent their careers building thoughtful, collaborative systems in schools. So Michelle spent over a decade leading the counseling program at the Spence School and brings deep expertise in clinical mental health and school-wide program development. Her work is grounded in supporting not just students, but the entire school community. Before her time in independent schools, she led an adolescent LGBT medical and mental health center in New York City. And Jenny is the director of counseling at the Nightingale Bamford School, where she's also been a key part of the school's leadership team. Her earlier roles at Horace Mann and Columbia University, paired with her training in family systems at the Family Institute of Cambridge, have shaped her holistic approach to mental health and her deep belief in the power of collaborative systems within schools. We're so lucky to get to learn from both of you today. So thank you for being here. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to start by just introducing what we're going to be talking about today. I am a clinician. I've been a clinician my entire career, but so much of our work is about systems. And so we're going to talk about some of the, challenges. We're going to talk about why we're here today, why we're having this conversation. So counselors are experiencing an increase in expectations. Many of us are sort of managing not just direct care, but we're also managing sort of filling in different areas in the community with sharing about mental health care and how to support students, but adults and the system as a whole. So a lot of us are feeling a bit overwhelmed by the direct care and the multiple roles that we have. So competing priorities and role strain. We're juggling care, crisis response, faculty consultations, and family outreach. And those are happening sort of not only just, what we do regularly, but there's a lot of crisis that are kind of pulling at us. And one of the things that we're finding is that the schools and ourselves and our roles, we're focused a lot on symptoms, like that there's so much anxiety in our schools, or there's, we're seeing a trend of things that are happening, which are really important in terms of understanding the care we're providing with students. But consequently, we end up neglecting some of the larger things, the systems. So where crisis response dominates, and structure and sustainable prevention systems are less attended to. And so we're here to talk about a need for more of a comprehensive, sustainable approach for counselors to be in leadership, helping with faculty training and family engagement. We believe in you guys, and we know that you're doing excellent direct care. So we're talking about the systems.
Great. And I'm Jenny, as was introduced, and love kind of working within the systems of school, and really just believe there's so much we can do towards the sustainability of this role. So our goal today in talking about this is really look at empowering councils to lead and not just cope, in that place that we all can get into so easily, where it's kind of crisis to crisis, but really looking at ways that we can be part of the leadership of a school or of a small team within a school, maybe a divisional team often, and looking at really shared responsibility for student success and well-being, looking at how we can work maybe with the dean's office, the nurse's office, the learning specialist, whatever that might be. But most importantly, and we'll keep coming back, looking at working with leadership and making sure there's buy-in from the top down, which is a struggle, but also exciting and easy to achieve because it's building relationships and bringing down the anxiety about some of these topics. So really looking at trying to work with you all today at shifting from symptoms to systems, to take the time, we're pulled so much, but to look at building some boundaries for ourselves to do the bigger picture work, to pull back and really building systems for our schools that work and that really support well-being in that holistic way.
All right, so what's making our roles challenging? It's not, all of us know that there's a rise in mental health challenges for our students. Post-pandemic, we've just seen an explosion of mental health needs, and we've seen a decrease in the community resources that are available to us. And I think that's just continuing to happen, where we're losing the external resources to support students. And so consequently, we're doing a fair amount of in-house like quasi treatment. Some of us who it's more supportive counseling are moving into really doing direct care in a way that in the old days would have been supported in the outside of our schools. And we talked about how a lot of our schools are moving from so we're in this space of sort of constant crisis, managing an event and or a large event like some of the ones we've had over the last year, that many of us are still sort of managing on a day-to-day basis, but also smaller crises that are happening internally in our schools, and it's leaving us to not have any time to recover, reflect, or rebuild our systems. And then, these are just a small overview of the sort of challenges that are making our work really hard. But then the sociopolitical tensions that are happening in the world are really not something we could sort of dismiss. That's impacting our direct care to kids constantly. And it's affecting our overall schools, our communities, who are sort of understandably managing how the systems, the global world is really impacting mental health care and DEIA care, and the intersection of that, and how some of our schools are needing to respond in ways that are in contrast to what they were just a year or a few years ago. And so we're seeing the outcome of that in our student health and wellness, and our faculty health and wellness, and our community's health and wellness.
I was just going to hop in, Michelle, because I think when I look at the burnout piece, I think it's really an important piece for us as school counselors, but we're all super aware also of the well-being piece for the teachers and other adults in our community, which of course can trickle down and affect the students. So it's another place where I really see an opportunity to engage leadership in saying, the well-being of everyone it can't all just happen in the counselor's office. There's really an opportunity there. So I just want to highlight that piece.
Yeah, 100%. So we're just going to do a quick, we don't call it a poll, a chat discussion, where we're asking you, to think about, before we kind of launch into a framework that we want to share with you, to think about a major barrier that's preventing you from effectively supporting students. So that could be something really big, or like really complex, or it could be just something that you're having today that you're seeing that's impacting how you're able to support kids in your classroom, in your office. So if you just put that in the chat, we can kind of get a sense of what's happening in your schools. So it looks like ratio meaning maybe ratio of counselor to student care.
Oh, I knew time in there.
Yeah. Resources, demand of counseling services. Counseling isn't built into the day-to-day, so there's really not a structure for getting to seeing students. Consistent support across divisions. Enough time for documentation. Lack of support. I'm going to assume that's lack of support from sort of a division or a head of school, or maybe a lack of understanding about the services that we need to provide for the students. Daily fires to put out, and not a structure in place. And I really appreciate someone saying a first-time counselor. You know, some of us are new to the field and we're walking into these jobs and there's not any systems that are in place. So we're walking in and kind of creating these roles just by our education. And some of us are walking in, you know, as seasoned clinicians and walking in and there's a system in place and we're just jumping in and using that system.
And a school can seem a pretty chaotic place compared to other mental health workplaces. So even just the adjustment, I think, can be a lot.
And funding. Great. I think we have a lot of really excellent information.
Great. So Michelle, do you think we want to move ahead?
Yeah, sure.
So thinking about some of these things that may be your obstacles, and I'm also a firm believer that wherever your obstacles are close by are probably your opportunities as well, when you get the space to look at it. So we're going to try to look at a framework for change, because we really want you to walk away from this today with some clear ideas of small steps you might be able to take just going out of this. So the first piece, which we've been doing, is identifying the key challenges that counselors are facing within the school. And, you know, I see a lot of common ground here. First and only school counselor. Again, I think that there are a lot of sort of shared ideas about what the things are that come up day to day that can get in the way. Time is usually a very big one for counselors. Am I doing that the right way? Oh, there we go. So looking at really trying to build a collaborative learning environment. Hopefully many of you have had opportunities for this, but hopefully today is one of those. So enhancing systems of communication within your own community, developing structured external consultation and peer-to-peer support. I know in New York, Michelle and I have been lucky enough to be members of a group which started extremely informally of counselors in the many girls' schools that are here. And it was just so great to get together periodically and share ideas and notice all the things that we had in common. So looking at building those.
So just to drill down a little bit more on the collaboration, we wanted to talk about within schools and then externally. So Jenny, do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead there?
So internally, you know, we really, you know, if we could have you walk away with one thing, it's communication, communication internally and externally. So within schools, it's really developing stronger connections between the different groups that you're working with, the deans, the division heads, the counseling, the learning support teams. Then many of you are using all kinds of different ways of tracking data, but and I can just say where at Spence, I started with, you know, developing they created a online electric medical system for us to do notes with that didn't actually work. And so then we ended up moving to, so far we've probably had like 6 or 7, and we landed with what we are at now, and I've left. So Hopefully things are going really well there, but having some way of having a system that you can kind of do data analysis. And I say that with knowing that you can't always collect data on things like when you have a student with high needs, it's hard to really collect. You could spend for one student 6 hours a week with them, unfortunately. And that's not always collectible in this kind of data approach, but you do need to have some system to be able to understand what it is that's the high demands of your work. And then community engagements, really shoring up the family, the community organizations that you have. And many of us have colleagues that we ask for supports for referrals and resources.
I would just want to hop in with the data driven. It's also helpful. I just find so many counselors um, find it's just really difficult to even describe their job and their work and their day to their colleagues who may be in the dean's office or in the administrative offices. And I think the data, working on that project could be really helpful and actually calming for everybody potentially in sort of just looking at, everyone here, I'm sure, has a sense that you don't know what's coming in the door on any given day. And I think that data can start to build a picture so that you can look at systemically. You're not pulling the counselor out of every meeting when a student is in tears, right? So that you're actually building some structures and some systems around to sort of prevent for that, and beginning to help people understand what the job is. And so often you're working kind of in isolation, but it's really useful for your colleagues on the administrative end.
Great, thank you. The other piece that we really wanted to highlight is that many of us are maybe one of just a few mental health professionals, and most of our supervisors are not mental health providers. They're, someone who's in an administrative role. We're highly encouraging collaboration externally. So whether that's attending a consultation group that's specifically for school counselors so that you can talk about sort of strategies for managing some of those high risk or high labor intensive clients, students, or talking about systems that work so that you're not creating this. There's so much resources available. You don't need to recreate the wheel on your own. Recognizing that all cultures are different and resources internally in schools are different, but having those opportunities externally. And then from my experience, there's not a lot of opportunity for counselors to get leadership professional development training. Very often we take our PD for learning a mental health modality, which is excellent and needs to happen, but we need to have also those other skills developed, because most of us are ending up in those roles where we're dual functioning. And so to have some of the leadership skills available to us. So this third framework, piece is providing practical evidence-based strategies that counselors, along with people in the community, can work within the school. So we're thinking about, in this way, we're thinking about proactive interventions rather than reactive kind of crisis work. So we talked about evidence-based modalities that we're working with, which many of us are, but there also needs to be like sustainable solutions. So things like multi-tiered frameworks, so that in public schools, and there may be public schools on this discussion today, but private schools don't often use like an MTSS type framework, and we can borrow from that and create a multi-tiered framework that works for our cultures, but really teaches the faculty and administration how to know when a referral needs to happen. Like there's so much work that's being happen on one level in the classroom, but then very often faculty don't understand when it needs to jump to like a tier 2, where it's an intervention, or a more high need student where it's a tier 3. So we're really encouraging some kind of system within your schools to kind of work with your faculty for providing support. And then again, going back to the professional development for your faculty, you would be the one who's engaging in teaching them about the sort of when those things need to happen in the system-wide framework that needs to happen so that your work is easier happening.
And a piece there too, Michelle, I was adding to the professional development. I've been thinking about this a lot recently is professional development for the higher up administrators. So for division leaders, head of school, they're there with you when decisions need to be made about a crisis. But they usually their time is not well protected probably for professional development around mental health issues. So they're really understanding when you're in their office and making a decision about whether a student can return to school without a safety check, whatever that might be, that we can help de-escalate things sometimes because they actually have more professional development and information. So sometimes we get to faculty, but it doesn't necessarily get to leadership.
Yeah, great. Then this last one, Jenny, we have the fostering leadership growth.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oopsie.
Sorry.
So again, coming back, Michelle was saying earlier, we come into these roles with our expertise and our training in mental health, but really looking at counselors at change agents within the school, because we are uniquely placed there. You know, I've been in meetings in my school. I sit on the academic affairs sort of curriculum oriented meeting, and you could wonder why I'm there, but I will sit there and see that they're adding, you know, every student can take another major this year or 7 minors this year, and that kind of thing. And I know that in my office, I'm seeing students that don't have time to breathe and feel like they can't say no to that extra thing because everybody else is doing it. So there actually just are all these moments to be involved, maybe to make our lives easier. You can think about it that way, but actually to be involved in the systemic changes and the way things grow. Somebody I think mentioned schedules and how that can really affect the sort of culture and the climate in the school. And again, like this is our consistent, I think, theme here is really empowering counselors as leaders. And I could feel like a big sigh probably in our chat right now, like, oof, I don't have time for that too. I have 3 students right now while I'm in this webinar that are waiting to see me. It takes, just from my experience, it just takes time. It takes those moments which you learn to do where you don't let a meeting be disrupted by a crisis, where you get a sense of kind of measuring things, and maybe there's a dean or an advisor or someone else could be with the student for a short time, but really looking at protecting that time so you can be in the room as the climate of the school is shaped, because we all know how much that impacts our students. And then it's also the sort of cultivating this culture of shared leadership. My hope for all of you, and I've enjoyed it, is that it can sometimes be fun. So that sort of creative collaboration that you get to do when you and a division head have like an aha moment of how you could shift something in student government or in assemblies or whatever it might be, where you can have a new moment to create breathing space or acknowledge the importance of mental health within the school community. So looking at sharing the leadership, not looking again at burdening you all with having to take on more.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that, Jenny, because I think the piece that is important and really hard to do is sharing with sort of your leadership team what you are doing, and so that they may need to carve out a little bit more time for you administratively or leadership wise, so that you have some. And again, we know that there's lots of different communities, schools on this webinar, and resources are happening, but you're doing the work anyway. So there has to be some acknowledgement from, well, there's a wish for some acknowledgement from the leadership team to recognize that this is happening. So carving out the time is really important.
And there can be confusion because we work so independently that sometimes, and we're all probably people who grew up and chose like the helping professions. So we probably, some of us like are people who just cope away and people think everything's fine when actually you're facing a challenge. So I think since we work so independently, it can be confusing to leadership that actually our drive is actually to connect with them and collaborate with them.
So this last slide is just a prompt to share that we gave you a small framework that we're going to do a little exercise, but this is a comprehensive approach, and we're not going to get into all of this right now, but it's to say that there are models to use to really make your jobs a lot easier, but they do require time and professional development for you to have the experience to know what they are, rather than just jumping into a job and being and they're an assumption that you are, those things are happening, because they're just not. So I can share at the end, there's a training that we're offering that would help you to look at sort of a comprehensive approach in your school. But this is just to give you sort of a bigger sense of what we're talking about. So we're going to just do a quick, we have a few minutes, we're going to do a quick activity with you. And we're going to sort of put this slightly into practice. So we want you to just think about, for the moment, a barrier that you're working on. So it could be a lack of teacher collaboration, an outdated technology system that you're using, disengaged student community, a lack of resource. So if you could just sort of think about that for a moment, and then identify one of these three areas. Now, that might be two that, or all three, that you would need to focus on in order to achieve that that the challenge that you're sort of thinking about right now.
And I would put on my I'm going to put on my high school counselor hat right now and really encourage you, as I would with a stressed out junior in our school, to like think very specific and very small, right? So I know we're all dealing with not enough time and not enough resources, but to get really specific about something, whether it's just having coffee with your division head, making space for yourself to take a breath during the day, to have it be something where you actually can be successful, and then use that to build forward towards other pieces of this aspiration.
And I'll just say, as I'm at August Schools last year, and I shared with you that data analysis was a challenge that we struggled with for a very long time. It took me 15 years to sort of help the school, and we tried a lot of things over time. So things were put in place, and then they didn't work, and then we put other processes in place for data analysis. And this past year, we were able to, I'm very excited that we were able to put in a much more, extensive system in place with the support of August Schools. And obviously there's, resources and things like that are important factors in data implementation. But I'm excited for Spence as they move forward with the possibility that this might be a way to help them. So we just want you to see in this last brainstorm exercise that you've identified the specific action, there's an outline, the action plan, the necessary resources that come into place, which can often be a barrier, and then enlist support.
And if you're looking to sort of really take this step, just coming out of some of the many ideas that we're talking about today, and we know that you're sharing, one way to enlist support, of course, is to, in your school, tell one other person about the thing that you want to work on and your ideas for taking it forward. So you have someone to be your really primary support on it.
And just lastly, I mentioned that, a group of us have sort of there aren't a lot of professional development for counselors. And so we've sort of taken upon ourselves to create a format and a program that would offer this kind of support for counselors. And this is happening this June, which is really an extensive version of what we just learned today, thinking about sort of how to make changes in our schools. How'd we do?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I just wanted to share a little bit in case anyone was curious about August Schools, as Michelle mentioned, that's what Sun School now uses. So I just wanted to quickly share in case anybody wanted to hear a little bit more about it. Feel free to fill out this form here in the chat, and someone from our team will reach out. Wonderful. Thank you so much to everyone who joined. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we can share some answers. But if you have to drop, feel free. I know you all have busy days.
Yeah, we wanted to offer the 30 minutes of learning, and then if people can stay, we're happy to talk through any of what we just shared or anything.
Wonderful. All right. And always feel free to reach out to any of us after the fact if you have any questions that you think of later. But hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.